We are seeing, again, no lines, pretty sizable turnout with the number we're looking at right now. We walked in thinking we'd at least go over a million. We're guaranteed to go over 1,000,001, probably approaching 1,000,002. I don't want to say we can get to 1,000,003 or not. That's going to be dependent on the rest of the day's turnout. But keep in mind, in the general election, we only had 1.4 million voters altogether on election day. So we're at a very sizable portion of that. In the early vote, we had 76% of the people who early voted meet that number again. Inside all of this, we're at, let me see, 80,000 people who did not vote in the general election have voted in the runoff. But that's in the early voting section. We won't know who showed up today who didn't do that. So with that, I'll take any questions you might have. Don't talk all at once.
So what was going on in Henry County? We heard at Salem Baptist Church the machines were down and you had to
No.
the emergency
It was one poll pad was down, is our understanding, and they had to go to the backup procedures, but voting never slowed down there. And that's going to happen sometimes. And this is one of the things I really love. We have literally 159 counties with 2,700 approximate polling locations, and we're asking about what happened with one precinct in one place when you have thousands of individuals out there. So this is normal election administration kind of things. I think somebody probably didn't load the poll pad properly, but they went back to normal voting, and there was no delay in actual voting at all. What else?
How about results tonight? Are a lot of counties doing early processing and tabulation as they did in the general?
We have worked with at least the big counties and the other sizable size counties to say, make sure you get your early vote up as soon as you can. Get your early vote up early. Fulton County, we know they said they're going to be doing it. We feel pretty good about that. They did it during the general election. We've talked to the other big four, and they have all kind of said that we'll try to do that. The other thing we told counties is, don't wait to get everything at once and then put it in. Give it to us as you get it, so we don't get the room to grow for conspiracy theories that, they showed up with 300,000 ballots at one time, which changed the outcome of the election. So I think they behaviorally are going to be doing that, and also in playing defense, so they should be doing that. So I think we'll have a good amount of tallies in by 7:30, 8 o'clock.
And talk about
Yes.
how that went in general, because that was a change the first time you've been able to do that, and it seemed to get those results in earlier, get things moving. I mean, talk about how...
To be fair, they could have always done that. They just chose not to. So we kind of leaned on and said, really, guys, best practice, do this. And they agreed after seeing the outcomes of not doing it that way. So I think it's better for everybody. It's better for the public. It's better for the counties. And it's better for the state because we all have, and it's better for the media because we got to feed you beasts and stuff all the time. So the sooner we can give you that stuff, the sooner we can get you off our backs. Wait, hold on. He's doing waiting patiently. No, it's going to be a people problem. As 99 times out of 100, we don't know exactly what happened yet, but more likely they didn't do LNA testing or they grabbed the wrong poll worker card. I mean, it's going to be something like that. This is one thing I want to be very clear when I'm going to ask the media again. I actually called the AJC, not you, Mark. I called Tyler earlier, and there was a headline that said machine issues. I'm like, it's a human being issue. We have people out there, Mike Lindell, people like that, who will grab headlines that are decent headlines, but they're people errors. They're not machine errors. Machines will do what they are told. That is how they work. And if you do garbage in, you get garbage out. So we got to make sure 99 times out of 100, this is a human error of having done something incorrectly or putting a BMD in the wrong place or a poll pad in the wrong place. That's where you see some of those things. It's not computer issues. It's just human being logistics issues. And human beings are flawed, and that's where nearly all of our issues come from. Now we can go to you.
So about 7:38, are you saying all your advanced votes will be in, or you're saying advanced votes and data?
No. By 7:38, we'll have most of the advanced vote and probably a lot of the absentee vote. What I'm saying is the big counties will be in, and those are things that really move the needle wildly when they do those because they're large and they usually go one direction. So when you have 40 small counties come in, they're all doing this. You have one big county come in and does this, and that's what really throws people off. So that's what we're trying to avoid.
What about day of voting? What time should we expect that?
Somebody in this room wisely pointed out that regardless of the size of the ballot, the geography of where you got to get the data from is the same in November as it is in December. And Fulton County is our biggest county, and it's physically our largest county. It's 90 miles long. They still have to get those cards downtown to get everything counted up. So that's still the day of voting will still be approximately the same kind of time we saw last time.
We saw during early voting it was a shortened time frame in most of the state, and that did result in some lines because you had so many voters in a shorter amount of time. But then contrast that with today, more voting locations, not many lines. And mixed into that equation is also check-ins at poll pads, which sometimes we saw during early voting, there weren't a lot of people manning the check-in stations, which caused slowdowns. What's your assessment of what caused more lines during early voting and not many at all today?
What we saw even in early voting in the general election is on Monday, the first day, there's always a line. On Friday, there's always a line. Now, Monday and Friday, there was only one of each of them this time. So we saw the biggest lines on those days, especially on Friday, where we processed 350,000 voters. The check-ins are always where the lines physically stack up. And I talked to several counties, and even they have looked back and said, if we do this in the future, we have to get a bigger facility. We have to find different ways to approach this. Frankly, the office believes we should have a conversation about our general election runoffs, the way we've constructed them, something that makes sense. The legislature, I know, is going to be having conversations. Do we need to look at maybe changing the threshold? Do we go back to the 45 threshold? Do we have instant runoffs? Are these worth the dollar and the time and the stress everybody goes through? We aren't policymakers. We execute the law as written. So we will continue to execute the law as written right now. But when you have the other thing that the counties will probably do in the future, which they didn't do this time, they left voting days on the table. Tuesday and Wednesday were voting days that were available to them, and they said, you know what, we're going to be fine. And frankly, the big part of it you have with early voting is anybody in the county can go anywhere. And I think everybody said, okay, we're not going to have 2021 level of early voting, but we're not going to have 2018, which was a 4-week runoff too, which we had 348,000 early votes, whereas we had 2.3 million early votes in the 2021 race. They figured it would fall and be closer to the 2018 race, and guess what? They were wrong. The Republican consultants I talked to were wrong. The Democrat consultants I talked to were wrong. The election officials were wrong. Everybody assumed we'd have a decent amount of early vote, but not nearly 2 million altogether. Nobody saw that. So now they know what to prepare for. But it's always difficult to make those judgments, especially when you have to train and get the qualified workers in to do those check-ins, because that is where the lines always are. Has anybody in this room or out in the audience ever seen lineups after check-in waiting for a BMD or the old-fashioned way, the DREs? No, because they don't happen, because all the lines are always at the check-in.
And then connect that with today. Today we have no lines because more polling places?
2,700 polling locations. We had no lines with 1.4 million voters in 2022 in the general election. Essentially, when you can plan and know, I have X amount of people who can show up, I need to have this many machines, this many check-ins, it's a lot easier than knowing I could have an infinite number of people show up at any given time and I only have 4 people to check people in. There's no way you can ever get past that, especially, biggest example is Ponce Library. They're one of the fastest processing locations in the state, but they start with a line that's an hour and a half long. They are never going to catch up. It's just, but people like going there. You know, people just show, they know it. That's what my mother insisted on going there. I'm like, Mom, there's a place 10 minutes from your house that has a 20-minute line. Well, this is my early voting place. I'm going to go there. People are creatures of habit, and they do that. And in the Ponce Library, as you know, it's a very limited physical location. You can't get more check-in devices. You can't get more machines. It is stacked full unless you just take over the whole library. Yes.
Yeah, so are you saying the Secretary of State's office would encourage the legislature to rethink the whole idea of a runoff?
I'm not saying necessarily we're encouraging them. I think the debate's going to be had one way or the other based on what happened this election cycle.
And that's something the office would welcome?
We would welcome any debate that can do anything to provide a better user experience for voters and give clarity to candidates and outcomes of campaigns.
So are you interested in a longer time frame for the runoff?
I don't think anybody's... If we polled Georgians and they had a choice between a 9-week runoff, a 4-week runoff, or no runoff, I got a pretty good idea where that's going to land. What else?
Are you talking a little bit about voter behavior on the day? Are your predictions bearing out in terms of people are scheduling around lunchtime, people are trying to avoid the mornings and the afternoons?
What we've seen today is actually really busy at the beginning because there's always those people who line up because they're going to go to work. And a lot of those people, we believe, behaviorally were probably early voters who decided, I'm not going to go wait an hour or 2-hour line. So we saw a big peak of that in the morning. But from the data we've been able to get from the counties, it stayed pretty even. It drops down in the 8 to 9 hour, but it stayed pretty even from 8 till about 2 so far. It's little dips and ups and downs. But we're seeing a little bit longer queuing because we're at a 2.5 wait time now. But again, I think behaviorally people are learning how to do this. Fulton County has their wait time app. I think there's one location with a there's one, the Hopewell Middle School is the only location. Everything else is less than 30 minutes. And literally, out of 2,700, there's 3 in the state that have 30-minute lines. So I think that our predictions are bearing true on that.
What about weather? Has it played a factor at all?
Thankfully, no. It kind of blew through early on, and it's a little chilly, but it's not nearly as wet as it was. So we keep an eye on the weather down at the in the headquarters to make sure there's nothing else coming. So far, it's been spotty, and since we can't do anything about it, we pray for it to be clear and nice. But so far, it hadn't seemed to have a real impact on turnout.
Have you had lines in the Savannah area? I think you mentioned that at 9.
There was one when they opened some places, but they all kind of came back down, and they're running a little bit longer than some other ones. I guess some 15 minutes, some 20 minutes, but nothing really big.
Your turnout figure that you mentioned, somewhere in the 800,000 range. How confident are you in that number? I know some counties might have automated connections, others might be doing it in a more manual manner.
We have about 53% of the registered voters are in a county that uses the wired poll pads that we have real-time view into. Before I walked up here, we were at 422,000 on those. So you take that 53%. I'm downplaying it because we have no visibility in the other ones really, other than hey, how's it going? So our estimate of 800,000 is a conservative but solid kind of estimate, we believe.
And that's as of 2 o'clock?
Yes, ma'am.
That's as of 2 p.m.
Yes, ma'am.
Carlos Stevens with WGXA News out of Macon.
Yeah.
What have you seen happen in Macon? Have there been any long wait times or any issues?
There's been no long wait times in Macon. What it was interesting to see is their early vote was trailing most of the state, and Houston County next door they have about almost the equivalent number of voters. Bibb has a little bit more than Houston, but Houston had nearly double the early vote. And I just think, again, I don't know what to attribute that to, because Bibb trailed a little bit on the early voting for that. Other counties that trailed that were big, Columbia County trailed, Harris County trailed, and Dougherty County has been trailing in early voting a lot, but they show up more on election day. And some of this is the behaviors of voters. We saw again that Greene and Rabun County were through the roof with their early voting, but you go across the state to Walker and Dade, and they're through the floor. So there's no telling what drives some of these things, other than oftentimes it's the local elections officials who've worked really hard to train their people up to show up early, or the ones that they were really more focused on election day, and then the behaviors of those campaigns. I will say that the Warnock and the Walker campaign hopefully will soon stop texting all of us 18 times a day to let us know we need to go vote. I got a couple while I was downstairs today. But in general right now, we've seen smooth running in Bibb County and in Houston County. We've seen smooth running everywhere, to be honest. And I'm thankful for the hard work of all those elections directors. And Secretary Raffensberger was telling me earlier, he's like, I don't know if we can send a fruit basket to everybody, but if we could, we should, because it's hard. It's hard to coordinate these things. And we talk about government being functional. It requires, we go vote, we show up, we show our ID, we go vote, we leave. It's taken months and months of training and work to get ready to do something like that. That is this much of a logistical endeavor across 159 counties, 27 polling locations, and thousands of, yes, some of them are full-time workers, but most of them are paid volunteers, for lack of a better word.
So if
Yes,
3
ma'am.
million people vote, what percentage is that voter turnout?
High. It's about 75% of what we saw in the general election. So that would put us at 3 million would be just under 50%, depending on how you want to measure it. If it's active voters, that put us just under 50%. If it's all voters, that put us at about 42-ish, which is still very high, extremely high for a runoff.
Have you heard any reports of threats or intimidation or disruptions?
No, not so far. I mean, the closest thing we had was the Black Panthers saying they were going to go patrolling locations, but I've thankfully have heard nothing about that other than one television report, and we've been talking to law enforcement. No one's it's having no impact, thankfully. Anything else?
I just wanted to make sure that I got this right. There actually was no problem with Newton this morning.
There was no problem with Newton. I came in within 5 minutes because they said that was a data input error on Newton County's part. They meant 0. They hit 40. I don't know how they did that. If their finger skipped across something and didn't notice it, but there was no problem in Newton County this morning. That it? All right. I think we'll probably come back around 4:30 again, give you a better idea. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. On the record, you called me wise. I just want to point that out.
I didn't say it was you, did I? They wanted to go to your head.
Yeah.
Raffensberger's not showing up.
I guess he was out in the hallway.
So why are they here rather than downtown?
Yeah, I guess it's me.
This is their election day
They
place.
heard I was in the room.
They like, and also they have all the law enforcement